Well, Green Party leader Elizabeth May, it would probably be said, is no friend of the Alberta government. She's in part who Jason Kenney means when he talks about the unfriendly federal parliament we have these days. The Green leader is laying out her terms today for supporting the Liberal minority government here in Ottawa. Elizabeth May joins me from her home in Sydney, British Columbia. Elizabeth May, good to see you. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you, Peter.
And congratulations on your re-election victory.
Thanks so much.
I'll get to your terms for supporting the minority government in just a moment here. But first, Albertans are finding out today how much pain they'll face as Jason Kenney's government cuts spending in that province today in the budget. He's putting some of the blame on you and other federal parliamentarians he describes as unfriendly to Alberta's resource economy. What is your response to Jason Kenney?
I think that Jason Kenney wouldn't want to be called unfriendly to future generations. I don't think it's a matter of friendship. It's a matter, and I do consider Jason Kenney a friend, which I reminded him of when we saw each other at Calgary Stampede. I don't think it's helpful to promote divisions and hatreds, or for the Premier of Alberta, whether it's Rachel Notley or Jason Kenney, to tell Albertans that Canadians don't care about them, their future, or their economy, because it's simply not true. What we all have to admit, and it's a tough one to admit, it was hard for the government of Quebec to say we can't keep promoting asbestos, it's killing people. Fossil fuels are today's asbestos. We actually have to shut the industry down. It's not about being for or against Alberta. It's about making sure that Albertans and all of us have a livable world. Now, fortunately, Alberta has a very vibrant economy and lots of resources. And it's not down to just fossil fuels. It has the best potential of any province for solar energy. It has amazing potential for geothermal, converting what are now toxic liabilities on the books of the Alberta government. This would help them with his finances, would be for the federal government to take the abandoned oil wells off his hands and have Indigenous people on their territories develop geothermal electricity out of abandoned oil wells. These are real life possibilities with the technology we have. There's no point telling Albertans that people who care about climate don't care about Albertans. There's no separate planet called Alberta where they can survive the climate crisis.
Right. Okay, I mean, if you look at the numbers, there's more support for parties elected to the House of Commons who want more ambitious action on climate change and favor a carbon tax, the Liberals, the NDP and the Bloc and the Greens, than the Conservatives who don't. So even the big oil producers support carbon pricing. So, I mean, is it your view that the Alberta and Saskatchewan premiers are just on the wrong side of this equation?
They're on the wrong side of everything if they don't pay attention to the science. And I'd have to say, I know voters chose parties overwhelmingly that say they care about climate. For that matter, Mr. Scheer said he had a real climate plan. I mean, he didn't, but neither does Mr. Trudeau and neither does Mr. Singh. So voters overwhelmingly in this country vote for parties that say they care about the climate crisis and want real action. And we really are running out of time. My appeal is always to be collaborative and find a way across party lines that we can all agree on a path forward that protects workers and ensures Canadians have a prosperous economy while going off fossil fuels as rapidly as possible.
Okay, what are your terms for supporting the supporting the government in a minority parliament?
Well, what I proposed today to Mr. Trudeau in an open letter that's copied to all the other opposition party leaders is that we find those areas where we have emerging consensus. And when you look across the platforms, there are a number of areas. Obviously, and I did restate this to Mr. Trudeau in person on a phone call we had a few days ago and right after the election, actually, on Tuesday, and also in the letter, that we as Greens, Paul Manley, Jenica Atwin, and I can't vote confidence in a government that holds on to a climate target that is inconsistent with the science and doesn't do what's necessary. That said, there are a lot of other areas that are not confidence motions where we should work together, particularly pharmacare. The Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens all said we need to bring in pharmacare. And even the Conservatives, add the Conservatives into this one, dealing with ocean plastics. Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, Green, let's actually ban single-use plastic items and try to protect our oceans. There are a number of areas. I would also add, improved mental health supports. And of course, the crisis of situation for Indigenous peoples in this country, the need to bring in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. That again leaves out the Conservatives, but certainly the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens have said we support UNDRIP. And this morning, a very historic event in British Columbia where the legislation to make British Columbia's laws consistent with UNDRIP. So we can make progress on things across party lines to make a minority parliament more productive.
Well, Justin Trudeau is saying he's going to complete the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, that it won't be the subject of a bargaining chip with you or any other party in the minority parliament. So, and I understand that maybe, you know, there are things you can work on, but if he pushes ahead with that project, does that poison the water for the ability to work with you on other things that you've talked about where you have in common? Or are you prepared to say, okay, well, let me ask you, what are you prepared to do if he says we're building that pipeline? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, he's said it. It's really a form of delusion. It sees as liberals. Justin Trudeau isn't the first. Back in the early '90s, Jean Chrétien dumped a lot of commitments that had been made to climate in the Red Book, which you might remember it. I don't imagine many other viewers remember the Red Book.
I do remember it.
But there were good, solid climate commitments that were dumped when Anne McClellan won in Edmonton by a squeaker. Liberals have this delusion that by pandering to fossil fuels, they can win votes in Alberta. It hasn't worked for them ever. What's important is not to pander. What's important is to be honest and straight up. You can't possibly, and Justin Trudeau must know this, they set a target for carbon neutrality by 2050. You can't get there from here if you keep adding fossil fuel infrastructure. You can't get there from here if you hang on to the target that the Trudeau administration kept left over from Stephen Harper. It can't be done.
Okay, but let me.
We will continue to oppose the Trans Mountain Pipeline, but if there's a vote on pharmacare, we vote for it.
Okay, let me ask you. So, just in terms of the numbers, as I look at them, and the way I see it, Justin Trudeau can't win with just your 3 votes. And he can't lose without your 3 votes, as long as he has support from another party. So how seriously does he have to take your demands?
I think the seriousness with which he takes our demands is based on the Greens', I think, widely understood place in Canadian politics as the conscience of Parliament. We don't have on the numbers, which is a tragedy for me personally. I certainly wanted to see us as Greens with the right set of numbers, which you can't control because we didn't know how many seats the Liberals would get and so on. I had hoped that we'd have that kind of determining force in Parliament that you can't pass a confidence vote without us.
Right.
He will easily find other dancing partners because the other big parties are more concerned with winning than with principle, and they will certainly prop up his government. They may take turns, but they certainly will. We won't on any confidence measures unless there's a commitment to change the target, which in our letter to the Prime Minister today, we point out that change in our target should take place before the next climate negotiations begin December 2nd in Chile. It's a change that can be taken without a vote in Parliament. The current target was put in place by Stephen Harper with no vote in Parliament. Justin Trudeau and his cabinet can pull that number and put in a new number. That will be very, very important to the success of global conversations.
Let me finish on this. I've got 15 seconds. I know you wanted, you just touched on it, you would hope for better results. Let me ask you about your own future. Are you staying on as party leader?
I doubt that I'll be party leader going into a general election if it's 4 years from now. If there was a snap election in the spring, I'd probably still be party leader. So my honest answer is the party needs to talk about it. My new caucus colleagues, well, now that we're 3, Jenica Atwin and Paul Manley and I need to know what they want from me as they find their feet. Paul had 1 month in Parliament, but he said to me the other day, look, I'm still a rookie. So we've got, and you know, there are a lot of considerations, but it's no secret to those who've asked me this question before, that it isn't a position that I'm dying to hang on to. I'm very happy to have succession planning, and I'd love to see younger leadership. I'd love to see Indigenous leadership. 2 very strong Indigenous candidates lost on Vancouver Island thanks to NDP smear campaigns. It's quite tragic, but the talent that was brought forward in this election campaign means that I don't doubt for a minute that there are many qualified people who would put their names forward at the moment I decide it's time to start that process of new leadership.
All right. Well, you're there for now, and it's good to talk to you again today, and we'll talk again, I'm sure, in the days ahead. Elizabeth May, thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter.